obviously it is a unique way to look at it, but I don't know that the zone, at least from my perspective, and the reading I did in the zoning ordinance, it didn't seem to me that there was a rule about making those uses so separate, other than saying this use is on this floor and this use is on this floor. So this was, you know, obviously this aligned with his goal for the space, how to live and run a business in it.
Commissioners, any more thoughts?
It's just what's gonna keep the next owner from living in that first floor.
That'd just be zoning enforcement. in my opinion.
And I guess that's his option. I have a couple of conflicting thoughts. First is that the building is unusual. It doesn't lend itself probably very well to segregating the upstairs from the downstairs. The openness is part of its charm and part of its interest. It is a valuable and interesting building for the community. It's in disrepair. It really hasn't been used in the past number of years. The home office claim for the first floor is pretty believable, you know. And Michelle's not saying it's gonna be an outside business like an insurance agency or anything like that, but no, in those regards, I think it might be a good use and it might be valuable for the community. On the other hand, I am worried about the precedent setting, you know, what would stop someone from buying a, 3 floors on Main Street and building a stairway between them and doing a similar thing. And alternatively, I know Petoskey had a proposal to allow dwellings on the first floor of their downtown and decided not to do that. But they did allow dwellings on the first floor on side streets. So if you were on a main street, they actually said you could do that. So they've been facing a similar question and they had more vacancies than we have.
I think, the master plan does talk about lower level businesses and upper level residents. But I think we need a clear demarcation between those two areas. I think there's just too much flow between them. And it is an interesting building. It's got great stuff in it, but I think with a good builder, you could incorporate that same feeling in the new walls to make it look like it's always been there. And that way keep the two areas separate and make everybody happy. If he wants to look down on it, put the wall in and put a window in. Because then we have a clear line of demarcation there.
What's the square footage of the upstairs?
1,300.
George, you have any thoughts?
It's interesting. I'm inclined to support it. That building's, it's kind of been a redheaded stepchild. It seems like it is really cool. I always walk by it. I always look in there, what's going on. So I'd be inclined to be in favor of it. I'm pretty concerned about the precedent that it may set for other commercial buildings in the business district. I think more comfortable with, having a bit more time and seeing a proposal that would incorporate sort of a delineation of the commercial and residential space inside Say if the owner's business did fail and he were to rent it to another retailer or wanted to sell the property altogether, what would make it more appealing to make sure that a business actually goes in and occupies the space? You know, whether that's use of modular walls inside, or I don't know, I'm not an architect or a designer, but there are some clever people out there who can come up with that kind of stuff. So I would say like maybe a little more thorough plan that that looked at different expected uses in the future. Then I would really, you know, if something made sense, I would really be in support of it. Right now, I'm sort of 70–80%.
Well, that will be his job. If the guy sells the building,
Yeah,
the next owner,
I know, but I mean,
We'll have to separate.
it says in the write-up that it's not appropriate to provide a recommendation at this time. So,
That was my suggestion.
what are we gonna do? And we're gonna be rewriting things if we, you know. I like George's idea about maybe, you know, looking at some future expected uses and how this could maybe be, but right now, it's not appropriate. So we
I
have to
agree.
do
Right now, it's
something.
not.
So you would like a proposal for what my client wants to do, but then also a proposal for if he wants to sell the building in the future, how that could be remedied for a future
Yes.
owner.
How are the stairs gonna be blocked off? How would those walls be blocked
But
off?
that future owner could be Trisha Whitty, and she has a gallery downstairs and her apartment upstairs. Or it could be me, and my office is downstairs and I live upstairs. And I do think there is a segment of the population that this kind of business and how, you know, residential relationship would work and is still part of the vibrant downtown.
And COVID has definitely changed things and the way that we think. So if it's not appropriate, then we need to look at changing things to make it appropriate. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to be naughty. We either gotta change it or.
Emily, what do you think?
I think her client sounds like a true visionary, and if he's the one that wants to live there and have that space, if it follows zoning and all the appropriate things, go for it. And I don't think it's up to him personally to make plans for some future person. He's buying it or he owns it for himself, and let, you know, person 10 years from now figure out what they want to do. It is on a side street. I kind of agree with that, where it's not on Main. And how many people do walk by, because it is the gallery kind of area and you kind of circle around. It's a beautiful, unique building, and he sounds like a unique individual that just sees it for a really special way that he wants to live, and that's what he's building it for. I don't know if it's up to us to think about the people from 10 years from now, if he's doing something that suits his needs and it follows all the other guidelines. So.
Ask Mr. Mulder.
Yeah.
Suggestion to consider for the applicant to consider. This is a unique situation. You've well discussed all the potential situations that could occur on this, and leaving it to the zoning administrator is extremely difficult. Yes, he's the chief enforcement officer of the zoning code, okay? And if you've ever sat in those shoes, you know how absolutely impossible it is to keep up with every single space in this town to make sure they're legal. It's impossible, okay? If the applicant and the owner suggested to the city, why don't I put a deed restriction that the lower level of this only be used for non-residential purposes? Maybe we've potentially solved his concern that he's going to get denied, and our concern, your concern, that this could never be a living space. And he's self-imposing that on his own property that he owns. And it would stick with the deed on that property. Now,
Interesting.
if that's something that the applicant's representative, Ms. Griselle, would like to take back and present to her owner, her client, she could respectfully request that this item be tabled this evening for continued discussion at the next meeting. And she gives her time to discuss with her client that idea. Just a thought.
Interesting idea, Mr. Hicks. Thank you.
What we're encouraging is, this isn't a huge project to separate these two units. What we're encouraging is, okay, fine, I'll separate them. We're done, we're in, tear those walls down. Because none of us will ever go back in that building. And at that point, he'll have what he wants.
Well, no. I'm not saying that there be any physical separation at all. I'm just saying that there's a deed restriction on the
Yes.
property,
I mean.
that the lower level could only be used for non-residential purposes.
Doesn't the zoning code as a law inherently tell us that that can only be business use? That is what the zoning ordinance is, and if we're saying that we're gonna follow the zoning, I mean, you sort of have to, I mean, you know, unless you wanna start asking for business plans along with the zoning application, you know, that's inherent in the zoning ordinance, that it's a business use on the main level. I mean, I can certainly ask my client about a deed restriction. It is part of a condo association, so that gets a little bit complicated too, but I feel like the law is already inherently telling us that that's what we can do, is have a business use on the main level.
That's true, but this is just reinforcing that idea.
Yeah.
And it is a restriction on the property itself that is part of the condo, not just the city regulations.
How fast does your client want to move on this?
I mean, I'm happy to ask you to table this, but I certainly would like some guidance on what additional information you might need. He would love to start construction this year,
Okay.
but obviously, you know, there are things that we have
Well,
to
can we
get
do
in
this
place.
and put our own restriction on it? Okay, we'll either approve or fail this based on an upcoming deed restriction. No restriction, sorry, and get this over with. Can we do that?
I think we ought to let Michelle's client reflect on this idea. Pluses and minuses. I see where you're going, Bob, and.
Well, that's my background, heavy construction. I hate to see projects
I know what you mean.
put back by bureaucrats while the contractors are standing around.
I respect
I don't think we have contracts.
that. That's subtle.
So it's almost like
Popular
a,
idea, huh?
we're trying to find a stamped guarantee somehow from the client that this is a business on the main level. Is that, I mean, otherwise, the non-separation, the visual openness, I would, if there's any additional guidance you have to table this, or if that's just the one sticking point, is the use on the main level.
Yes, let me try to phrase it for the commission. Please check me. The one thought was to ask for plans of how a separation could be achieved in the future architecturally, which is interesting. And it would let us know that it is possible. But on the other hand, if the idea of a deed restriction was acceptable to the client, then really we wouldn't care what the architectural aspects are, right?
None of our business, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Would you care to table this?
That'd be lovely.
Right.
See you next month.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you,
Thanks so
client,
much for your
too.
time. Sorry for the time, guys.
Well, we have a request from the applicant to table this. Do we have somebody that would like to make a motion?
Oh, that's a great idea procedurally, John.
So moved. Well, second motion.
Bob Tolman is,
In a second to table this.
and then Al Dyke is seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Members of the public. This is going to be a long meeting. We got a number of detailed things. Feel free to come and go. Feel free to stand up. Feel free to stretch, go get a drink of water. It's not rude. Don't worry about that. Let's just, we're going to give this a good thorough hearing tonight. Do the very best job that we can. We may call a break at some point too tonight. So if anybody feels the need or feels the time is right, please speak up and say it. The other thing I forgot to do, members of the public, was introduce Max Bassett. He's our student representative on the planning commission. He's a senior at Harbor Springs, junior. And he's here learning about the detailed work that we do. So hats off to Max for doing that. Okay, next thing on the agenda is a public hearing, 289 East Main Street for a special land use for a fitness center.
Before we begin that, I'm involved with this project. This is my wife who's spearheading this, so I'll recuse myself from any voting. And if you'd like me to participate in the discussion, I'm happy to do that or not. Up to you guys.
Main Street. Great, commissioners, what do you feel about this?
Yeah, I want to get,
Okay,
Pardon me, Al?
I want him in here. to
In the
talk.
discussion?
Yep.
Not the voting.
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Great, thank you, George. All right. Since this is a public hearing, why don't we need a motion to open the public hearing? And a second,
I move to open the public hearing.
there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Emily, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. And we could start with the applicant who would tell us about her plan.
Hello, my name is Chelsea Stones, and I'm looking to open a boutique wellness center here on Main Street at 289 Dr. Pierce's old dental practice. The idea behind this would be that it is class-based, rowing, running, and cycling. Class size would be 10 to 12 people, mainly mornings and evenings.
Okay,
Are there any variances or any special things we have to do to allow this?
Basically, a fitness center is permitted in the central business district as a special land use. And Ms. Sims has provided that application, that information. She provided a very good narrative that describes her business. She's addressed all of the basic concerns of a wellness center or a fitness center in the CBD as outlined by the zoning code. I've commented on all of those in my report. I'm not going to specifically review them because I know you've done that. The only thing, there's actually two things that that aren't provided. One is the ordinance requires a shower facility for a fitness center. And every fitness center that I've ever been in or exercise facility has a shower. Probably over the last 15 to 20 years, nobody uses them. To be very honest, they come dressed, ready to go. Okay, they leave and go home to their clean sanitary shower and take a shower. When I was very young, everybody used to shower, the guys anyways, in a communal shower. Okay, they don't even do that in high schools anymore. So it's a provision that we have in our zoning code that you could waive in this situation. The only other situation there is that because Dr. Pierce's office has been there forever, has always existed, and his gravel parking lot to the north has always been there, he never paved that parking lot. Now that we have a new owner, now that we have a new use being proposed, and I'm assuming that Chelsea and her husband do not own this property.
Correct.
That is correct. They're only lease tenants. I have suggested to us that that parking lot needs to be paved. it's not necessarily their responsibility, but it's kind of querying this situation of approval of this because it's not being proposed to be paved by the owner. It's a non-conforming situation. And when we have a change of use, we have a change of ownership in a non-conforming situation and a new use being proposed. The site needs to be brought up to code. So there is a need, unfortunately, for them. And I hope it doesn't clear this because I think this is a very good use for this piece of property. And it's pretty exciting, I think, that they work with the owner and figure out a good way to get this parking lot paved as required by our zoning code. I guess I
Does the zoning code require asphalt paving? Yes.
Yes. All parking lots need to be hard surface and drained and be appropriate. I'm not sure that this might be the only unpaved parking lot in downtown. I can't think of any others. When I drove around today, again, when I looked at aerial photography, I couldn't spot another one. There may be one there that I missed, but I can't think of another one. I don't see anybody else going, oh, I know one. But it's the only one that I know. Is it the ultimate use of that piece of property? Maybe not. And actually that gravel parking lot is immediately east of the site we just talked about for the live workspace that Michelle was representing. There's no windows in that side of the building either. So, but that's a situation that needs to be resolved. And I don't know if you have had any discussions with your owner.
When I read the memorandum, I did bring that up to them. They had no comment on it. I will back up and say that I have 0 allotted for tenant improvements. If you've looked at the space, it needs a lot of TLC. So every build out and tenant improvement is going to be out of my pocket. I don't have an appetite to pave a parking lot. So if this is something that's going to, prohibit us from moving forward, this is something that I can't discuss. It has to be
You're looking at $6,000.
the property owner.
Probably.
Yeah, that's not in my business plan.
And I understand.
Just to back up on something, the shower, there actually is a shower on the premises. It's not in my plan, it's in the basement. I would never have my customers go down there and utilize that. I do want to just touch on that note, in my opinion, I know it's, in the zoning code, it's requiring a shower. It's pretty common that in these small boutique studios where you go and you just go and take a 45-minute class, there are 1 or 2 bathrooms in a changing area. Nowadays, things are changing a fair bit in the sense that this isn't a gym center that people are visiting whenever they please. It's strictly class-based. People don't really require a shower anymore. So that's my only comment on that. And then, with regards to the parking lot, I'm sorry, I don't have more I can offer there. I'm not the landowner.
Is this a deal breaker for you?
Like if I'm required to and the owner won't pave it, yeah, I'm gonna have to walk away from the lease.
So if we just think out loud here, so if the owner wanted to lease it to someone else who didn't want to operate a dental practice there, almost any other use would still trigger the need to pave that parking lot.
That's right. Exactly right.
I've been negotiating this lease since January. It was pretty tough to get to this point, so I don't know if that weighs anything. I don't know if they would just hold out for the stars to align and that dentist to come in town and rent it from them, so no more capital is expended, but that's where I stand.
Oh, why wouldn't they pave?
Why wouldn't they?
Mhm. I mean,
I guess
because
one-
whoever comes in,
because
they're gonna need
$6,000.
$6,000, is that
Well,
just it?
And that's not a huge expenditure, in my opinion, in this town, or any town, for a parking lot. At the same time, though, this may be a temporary use. by this one, and I have no idea what your long-term plan is. Is this a 5-year lease or is this a,
This is a
One-
2-year lease with
Two-year
a
lease.
12-month extension option. So
Okay, so
that
she
kind of
could be
also
there for
weighs into the
years.
picture of me not having the appetite to pay for parking lot.
sure,
If this was a 10-year lease or a 5-year lease, I would definitely entertain it, but the fact that, you know, they recently purchased property, unclear what their future plans were. We came to the agreement that a shorter term lease was, you know, agreeable on all sides. There could be the potential of me, you know, renegotiating and staying there longer. I'm not sure if that could kick off some sort of other review. Obviously, if this is approved right now, it's, you know, approved, but, yeah, I can't really offer more information than my experience of, you know, getting through the lease process.
Larry,
Yeah, go ahead.
could we not waive that in the interest of avoiding more runoff into the lakes and the harbor? Sort of on an environmental tact? Because it's been there for all this time.
I wouldn't suggest waiving the requirement in total.
Okay,
Another thought is that we postpone the enforcement of that provision, being this appears to be, based on the applicant's description, a short-term use of this until the owner makes a long-term decision about the ultimate use of the property.
okay.
So we could potentially review that situation again in a year. I think you have a 2-year lease, you said, with a 3rd year potentially being added. We could do it for 2 years. And then if she does or doesn't extend that lease, then we could look at that. And if she's no longer going to be there, then how can we require the owner to do it? Because nobody's going to be using the property. And so he or she may have a plan then for redeveloping that whole piece of property between Main and 3rd Street. So that would, there is some precedent of that in the city, not many times. Well, this doesn't happen very often for doing an improvement like this. I've done it in other communities before and it generally works okay. I can't think of any, that maybe Bob, you have an idea of how could we, is there something we could put on that surface to help stabilize dust in this, but it's not a drive-through parking lot.
Is
Basically
it
get
the
fires.
dust that's the concern, or is it the fact that it's not ADA accessible?
Well, all of those things. There's dust, there's runoff, there's, you know, the zoning code standard that all uses have to have a paved parking lot. I mean, there's a whole host of things that this doesn't comply with. So it's, the suggestion is let's make it right. The reality of it though is the applicant isn't the owner, and to do that clears the deal, which I think is a good use in town. So is there a way to make it happen? Well, we could postpone that enforcement of that provision for 2 years.
I mean, Monti could come out and oil it, you know, which we do on rural roads, but we've got a couple of buildings out in the country, and when we have that done, it's
Not good.
I don't
Okay.
I don't go out there and walk
Let's
around a lot.
hold those ideas, think about them. We're still in the public hearing part, so let's open it up to members of the public. Anybody have any comments, suggestions, questions? Anything for the good of the city?
It's been that way forever, why worry about it?
Yeah, that's
Why worry about it? I'm gonna put a 2-year designation and go ahead and do that, but even if it's been there as a tennis place for how long? This is a different use, but whereas,
No, it was like that long before Mike Pierce came.
yeah, so what there is. Other than it's against the code.
So of course we got
It's against the code, and it isn't an asset to the city either, the way it looks. So there's a lot of different reasons to, and it creates
What's going runoff. in could be an asset to the city.
If it was paved, yes, and it would.
Maybe people in the shop.
What we're considering is what other communities do big time with industry.
Yeah.
All kinds of concessions are made to lure businesses into your community. And this is a business that I'm trying to lure into this community.
Sure.
And in fact, there's no lure. They're ready, willing, and able to join the community.
That's why I suggested the 2-year provision.
Okay,
Okay.
let's
Yeah.
go back to the public for a minute. Anyone else have any input on this? All right, how about a motion to close the public hearing here?
So moved.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Second. Second, all in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, members of the public. Ms. Sims, if we were to grant you conditional approval of your special land use request tonight, based on your owner getting the parking lot paved, would that be helpful to you in having that discussion with them?
I would say that the fact that I called them earlier this week and I sent them the memorandum and there has not been any progress there is an indicator of their appetite. I don't want to say yes or no or speak on their behalf, but just given my experience of 5 months negotiating the lease, I've gotten to know their appetite on maintaining and upkeeping and improvements on the space. So I, of course, want this approved tonight, but this seems like this is the big one, the big blocker
When do you want to get going?
right now.
Okay.
Are
Are you gonna fix the fountain?
I'm gonna fix the fountain, I'm gonna do all of the landscaping, it needs to be repainted. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done, and in my opinion, the parking lot is not one of them from where I stand. It's
All right, so you're gonna fix up the building and make it look like it did when Mike was there,
gonna look beautiful.
presentable and,
Yes.
okay.
And then Larry, with the shower piece, how does that differ from the yoga studio across the street as far as?
Well, she clarified there is a shower
Okay,
downstairs.
So and that would count as.
Okay. That's good enough.
All right, I've got another procedural thing for the commission. These are the 7 tests for a special land use approval. Now, why don't we go through these quickly and see where we come out, make sure that everything's in agreement with the 7 tests. About exactly how to close this. All right, I'll do an experiment. I'll take us through these real fast. Proposed special land use shall be a size, location, and character that will be in harmony and appropriate with the orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood. How do people feel about this proposed use?
Check.
Check. Number 2, the proposed use shall be of a nature that will make vehicular and pedestrian traffic no more hazardous or congested. Taking into consideration traffic flow, proximity, et cetera, et cetera. How do you feel about that?
Good.
Here's some assent. Good. Number 3, the proposed use shall be designed as to the location, size, intensity, site layout, and periods of operation to eliminate any possible nuisance emanating from there that might include dust, noise, fumes, vibration, smoke, or lights. Any concerns there? No proposed use. Number 4, proposed use shall be such that the proposed location and height of the buildings or structures, walls and fences and landscaping will not interfere with appropriate development. Any concerns there? No change to the existing.
Not applicable.
Number 5, the proposed use shall relate harmoniously with physical and economic aspects of adjacent land uses as regards to prevailing shopping habits, convenience, access by patrons, etc. Concerns there? No. Number 6, the proposed use shall be so designated, located, planned, and be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected. Let's have some comments, please.
No problem.
No problem.
All good?
This table, okay, good. Number 7, proposed use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood in which it's located and will not be detrimental to other permitted land uses in the district. Okay, good. So pass the 7 tests 100%. Now the question is, how do we react to this request?
I have one more question for the
Go.
owner. One more question for you. periodically, somebody from your firm will go out and sweep the stones off the sidewalk back into the parking lot, et cetera.
Yes, if that becomes an issue, if that's something that
It will.
Dr.
I
Pierce
mean,
was.
cars
yes,
pick up the
of
stones.
course,
When
yes.
Mike was there, he had the landscaper guy every week sweep that back into the parking lot and try and make it decent.
Yes, 100%.
All right. What do we need, a motion?
Yeah, what, would you like to try to phrase one?
Yeah. Make a motion to approve this.
Under the reasons that it fits the fitness center
Yeah.
standard of the definition as contained in the zoning code. Secondly, it meets the standards of the CBD district for special land use subparagraph 9 as outlined in my memo. It meets all of those standards. And it also meets the standards of a special land use, the 7 as reviewed by the planning commission. And you would motion to approve that subject to the parking lot being, the sidewalk being swept
Yeah.
on a weekly basis. And 2, the parking lot would be reviewed for paving after 2 years.
Reviewed.
Yes, would be reviewed for paving.
Does
Does that make
motion,
sense?
Bob?
Is that what you were
Yes.
talking about, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay, don't let me put words in your mouth.
That's great.
Oh, well, you could tell I was looking, thank you.
We have a motion
Yeah.
on the table by,
I think it's two young people coming to town to try and make a go of it in a building that's rapidly deteriorating on Main Street, and I don't see any cons with any of this.
And if they don't do the parking lot, it just may sit there for who knows how many years.
Absolutely.
And just get
Till
worse.
the building decay. Yeah,
Right.
I think this is the way to go.
I second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the special land use. For all the reasons that Larry stated with the 2 conditions. The conditions were that the sidewalk be swept on a regular basis, and 2, that we review the parking lot for paving in 2 years from tonight.
Would you like a roll call vote? for
Yeah,
that?
let's have a roll call vote. Jeff, excellent idea.
Rick Turchinski,
Yes,
Vanessa Warren,
Yes.
Emily Dubay,
Yes.
Tom Sullivan.
Yes.
We'll skip George P.'s recusing on this, right? Bill Mulder,
Yes?
Barry Lustgarten.
Yes.
Al Dyken.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passed.
Max doesn't get a vote. Huh?
No, he's
No.
here to participate and offer thoughts and participate in the discussion, but as a student, he does not get a voting.
I would be curious, though, in these proceedings, in the future even, to hear what he thinks.
Yeah, I meant to call on that.
Or how
Don't
he
be
would,
shy,
or
John.
how he would vote, given the opportunity. Aye.
All right, Ms. Sims, thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'm gonna call a stand-up break. Audience?
How many more do we have to go?
Like 7-minute stretch?
The 20 minutes to 7. That's first.
And I want to take this time, Bill, to let you know and apologize to viewers that are streaming, but during our first site plan review, the laptop took the opportunity to do an update and restart. So unfortunately, about 10 minutes of the meeting were cut out. And I apologize for that. Hopefully they can hear the reason why and that it was not in various reasons, but just a fault of the laptop.
Space.
Well, it was for that one thing, so that they have a picture of it.
This is the new one.
Yeah.
We already bought.
Yeah.
Just take a look at it. Yeah. Okay.
I totally agree. And that they also.
It's just-
Approval of task force, how about approval?
It's just gonna sit down and it's gonna get dilapidated and it's just gonna get worse.
like.
I thought they always owned that.
Yeah.
Right,
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And you. We can't. Right. I think it'd be at least 40.
They know.
Each was a little, and not only got it, I think. Or is it- Are you? Yeah, I know your dad, yeah.
Wait a minute, sorry.
Till 9 o'clock, do we get?
All right.
Do we get food?
But why don't we get going?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right, next thing on the agenda is the public hearing for 174 Traverse Street, special land use request for a rooming house. And could I have a motion to open the public hearing? Is
So move to open the public hearing.
there a second?
I second that.
All in favor of opening the public hearing on 174 Traverse Street, special land use, please say aye. Aye. All right, the public hearing is open. Is someone representing the applicant on this?
Background history,
What's your name?
Jed Avery.
Oh, hi, Jed. Yes, tell us what you're asking.
We are asking for special land use at 174 Traverse Street. It has been a site of construction for the past 4 or 5 years, 5 years-ish. Gone through different stages of ownership, duplex, multifamily. Most recently, we purchased it in a state of to be a short-term rental with a rooftop patio. And we are asking for a special land use to convert to a rooming house adjacent to our other rooming houses for our employees for the duration of summer.
What business are you?
Little Harbor Club.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the application?
Okay, if you've got questions, happy to field them.
We will. Why don't we? Yeah, let's go to the public then. All right. Would anyone like to make a comment on this? And the way that this works is you stand up and say your name and your address and then give us your best 3-minute pitch.
John McHenry, I own 172 West Bay. We're adjacent to this supposed rooming house. And right behind us, we're on the bluff on Bay Street, and this is on Traverse. I guess my big question is, how can you have a rooming house designation? Because I did some checking before, and once that house is designated as a rooming house, doesn't matter who owns it, who operates it. And that is not particularly acceptable. We own both houses below it. And there's one rooming house, I guess, called a rooming house, and it's grandfathered. And this is a new one. And I don't think that designation ought to go with the house. It ought to go with whoever is operating it, like the Little Harbor Club, that's fine. If people stay in it, that's fine. If they chose to get rid of it for any reason, then I've got an open rooming house above where I live. And that's detrimental to the value of the property.
Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, sure.
Based on that comment, Mr. McKinney? Okay, John. I get that one right easy. What you're saying is Little Harbor Club, as long as they own it and operate it as a rooming house, you guys are fine with that?
Yes.
But if anybody else owned it.
Because we have two houses below.
Yes, if anybody else owned it and operated it as a rooming house, because you're not familiar with them, you're not sure you'd be happy with that idea.
It would not be a seasonal operation.
Right, okay, I just wanted to make sure I
3 or
understood.
4 month operation.
Okay, thank you.
Then we would, because at the moment, if the project goes through, which, it's been sitting there half built for 4 or 5 years. I don't have a problem getting it finished.
Okay,
But what I don't want is people going and renting by the day or the week and then walking down between our house and the condominiums to get to the beach and taking the dogs and
Yep.
chairs and garbage and stuff.
I
And
understand.
we have no control.
Thank you for the clarification.
Great question, thank you. Any other members of the public like to comment?
Margie Marks, 818 Arbor Street, just a question, so it would only be used during the summer months?
Correct. Our operation is 12 weeks long for our actual operation of the club. Generally, staff is there 2-3 weeks, maybe before, maybe 2-3 weeks after. At the maximum, it would be 5 months, maybe. And that would be a very long, odd season. Rest of the time would be vacant.
So offering it then as a rooming house instead of offering it as a full-time residence that could be resided in on your lawn, does something very different for our city.
Maybe you're using the wrong word. Is this a dormitory or a rooming house?
The term I've been instructed to use is rooming house.
By definition of the zoning code, he would be
But
operating.
in practical application,
Yes,
it's a dormitory.
right.
Practical applications employee housing.
Yes,
Yeah.
dormitory.
Exactly.
Who previously owned and operated this property?
It was a development corporation.
Okay.
And their intentions were short-term Airbnb rental.
Let's stick with the public and we'll circle back.
Yeah, one other thing, we own those two properties, we're next to Beachview and the rooming house above us, and another one. We have no problem with the Little Harbor Club operating.
Okay.
And we have the option as owners down there to go to jail and say, at 2:00 in the morning, you guys gotta turn it off. And it gets turned off. We would not have that ability.
Right.
With an owner that wasn't involved and it was on a yearly basis.
Perfect.
I'm Peggy McHenry. I live with them.
That's not fair.
Not sure how to take that one.
For years. Did you say you were putting a rooftop
No.
something?
When we purchased it, there was a spiral staircase and a glass rooftop patio.
I got you.
For the Airbnb guests that we did not install the staircase.
So that's gone.
That'd be about the last thing I want.
And how many people do you think will be in there?
I would say a maximum occupancy, because I'm gonna use a double occupancy per bedroom, would be 12. I don't foresee that happening, because if we have couples, 2 to a room, we do not bunk up like Mackinac Island. We keep it very open and very enjoyable for our students and or staff who are with us. So I would use an occupancy of 12 with double occupancy per bedroom.
The house sure has grown over the years, hasn't
6 bedrooms, 4 baths.
it? Thank you.
How did you find 12 employees?
Other members of the public,
housing.
let's go to someone who hasn't commented yet. Jeff,
I think I'm
could you
actually
stand
just
up and
gonna,
say your name, please?
oh, I'm sorry, Jeff James, Second Street in Birchwood. And also I'm on the board of the movie theater and the movie theater building. So if there's any other questions about that, let me know. Anyway, as far as this house, I would much rather have one entity, the Little Harbor Club in this case, owning that house and them having their 12 or 10 or 8 people, whatever it is in that house, versus having people come in, on a weekly basis. You don't know who they are. And at that point, you probably, if it was somebody else, they'd probably be renting it in the winter and the, late fall and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is a great use, and they already own the house next door and then the house across the street. So I think it's a wonderful idea.
Gentleman back.
Yeah, John Coulter. I live at 171 Traverse Street, so it's right across the street from the house that we're discussing. And so we have been there since the Little Harbor Club opened. The concern that we have about the overall neighborhood is that with Beachview, with 174, 182, which is beside that, and then 163, right, Joe, which is right beside us, are all rooming houses in that neighborhood. So it's people who don't own that property, who are living 2 to a room. Potentially, I don't know how many will be in all those houses together, but
Maximum 2.
yeah, just the maximum. And we've had this discussion with Jan and with the Little Harbor Club is are concerned that those homes and the yards and the things around those just aren't kept up as if a private family owned those. The houses get a little run down. They're used for storage areas in the backyards and in the garages. There's commercial traffic that comes into the driveways to drop things off and pick them up. It's all part of running their business. I get that. But as a neighborhood, the thought of yet one more rooming house with 10 or 12 more people coming in who don't live in that neighborhood, issues about the value of all of our properties around there, even though it's a strong market right now, where do people park? Just the regular foot traffic back and forth. I think is from the people I've heard from around Travers Street and Woods Drive and Glen Drive, it's just the overall concern, not so much about the Little Harbor Club, because I think they're probably a good operator there. But just in general, is there attention being paid to these properties the same way they're paying attention to the Little Harbor Club? And the people I've spoken to at the Little Harbor Club have been very honest in saying, we've been remiss in that. And we fully intend at a meeting we have coming up in the next couple of weeks to address that and become better neighbors in the neighborhood. That's good to hear. And we would hope that they would follow through on that. But in the interim, the thought looking back, which is all we have is history, looking back at the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years and beyond, another rooming house is not very appealing to us under our current expectation and guidelines.
Thank you very much. Ma'am, in the middle.
Hi, I'm Barbara Young, 14 Woods Drive, where I live with my husband there. And our path is beside, comes right up across the street. I think I'm part owner of that little path, even though I'm tucked back inside. I want to talk about a third rooming house on Travers Street. I hope you've had a chance to look at 182 Travers Street. That is a current rooming house. In the summer, there's all kinds of noise, people on the porch, music late at night, drinking, cars parked on the lawn. I don't know how many people are there, but their cars are all outside there. I hope you've looked at that place. Have you seen the foundation is coming apart? The front porch looks like it's going to fall off. It needs painting. The windows need work. There's wires coming out all over. I think everybody has some kind of wiring going on out of that house. In the summer, I would come down my little path there right across the street from 174. I would bike to the farmer's market. I had to go out into the road because right in front of 182, somebody had broken a car window and left that glass there beside the driver's window. It was there all summer long. Nobody cleaned that up because they're itinerant people who are just in there living. That's what happens when you have a rooming house. We have 182 is a rooming house. The one next to Colders is a rooming house. We have all kinds of traffic parked everywhere. This is not what a neighborhood in Harbor Springs should be. I'm going to
The
ask.
concerns need to be addressed to the correct people, which is not the planning commission. If you're having an issue with your neighbors, that's.
Well, I'm addressing to you approval of a rooming house, a third rooming house on Travers Street. I'm just telling you what happens. This would be a third rooming house, and it doesn't fit with the nature of the neighborhood. It doesn't, to have 3 rooming houses in any neighborhood is not the characteristic of Harbor Springs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Good comments.
At the risk of being repetitive, my name is Pam Helder. I live at 115 Travers Street. My family's owned the house since the early 70s. I'm with these 2 people, with Mr. Coulter. How are we going to know that the Harbor Club is actually going to maintain these properties appropriately? What about parties and noise? And a big problem is parking, because Traverse Street is just wall-to-wall parking all summer long. And it's a problem. And fortunately, I have a curb, they don't park on my lawn. But further up, they do. And there's not much you can do to stop them. And why, it's already bad enough, why have more?
Oh. Thank you.
Janet Stewart, I live at 410 Pine Street, so I'm not in the immediate area. But I did have the chance last year when my niece's daughter was working at the Little Harbor Club to go into Beachview, which has been there all my life. And I want to say, I understand that there is a very big need for housing for employees to provide all the things that we all want during the summer. But the fact that the Little Harbor Club and the members who go by every single day have never taken, to my knowledge, the opportunity to go in and look at where they are asking their employees to live. The conditions are absolutely deplorable. I'm surprised I didn't fall through the stairway walking up to the third floor to help carry items down. There are windows. I had to bring a little screen in for my niece. Some of the windows don't open. I really believe, I don't know as a city, if we do inspections on boarding houses, rooming houses, I know there aren't nearly as many as there used to be. But I think before you approve something like that, someone ought to go and look at the conditions that are being allowed for their employees to live in. I think it would be a real shock to most people.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Sure. Well, let's close up the public hearing then. It looks like.
Can I ask one more question
Yes.
before you close it? Why does it have to be designated as a rooming house? Why can't there be some sort of special designation allowing seasonal people to be in it, as long as it's run by a legitimate operation in Harbor Springs that is responsible for those people and the operation? Why should it just be a rooming house? And I've been told that it's a rooming house and the prop, that sticks with the property. That house becomes rooming house. I mean, who owns it? And I think that's wrong. It needs to be controlled by the person or the companies that own that place, not just rooming house designation.
There's no oversight. Nobody's paying attention to them. Harbor Club already has multiple properties that are being, are in rundown condition. I don't care if there's the Harbor Club or not, or whether you call it a rooming house or Airbnb. They're not being properly maintained. The people, it's too much population density for the area. It's supposed to be a residential neighborhood, mostly single-family homes and stuff, and now it's not.
Yeah, okay. Brent?
I have a quick question. So, because I don't know, in the house, in the new one,
174.
174, and then the other one, the white one next door and all that, are there cooking or kitchen facilities, or is it like beach?
There is.
So they can cook?
Yep.
Just like a regular?
Those are our more
house?
mature staff.
Because Beachview is not, correct?
Beachview's not.
They're not allowed to cook.
Correct. Beachview has a staff cook that cooks 3 meals a day, 7 days a week.
All right.
Bill, sorry, if you don't mind, I'd just like to add, we did have, I think, 5 or 6 pieces of correspondence that was part of the packet. And then I passed out, or we have 3 more correspondence that was received after the packet was sent out, just so that you're aware of those documents as well.
Commissioners have those late letters in front of them.
I would like to know our housing spreads all the way over to US 31 over by Crooked Lake. So That's where our drivers, our employees that have licenses that are older go. The houses that we have in town, each few are for more college age students and workers. The other houses are mainly people that fly in, they work for the summer. The parking is not anything to do with our density in that area.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion to close the public hearing? This is where someone makes a motion to close. the
I
public
move
hearing.
to close the public hearing.
I have a
Second
second. Second. Thank you. Now, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, commissioners. Now you can ask additional questions.
I have a question for the gentleman. A little quick one. You've been mauled pretty good here tonight. Do you have a response to this? Future plans, intentions?
Everybody's of the opinion. We are thoroughly prepared for it. I would say our employee housing is hardly deplorable. If our staff maybe had an unkept and you visited on the 4th of July, it maybe look like that. We've invested almost $500,000 in capital improvements in our employee housing in the past 3 seasons. It is a goal of ours to continue to do such. We just refinished all 3 floors of our original hardwood and for up to 3 years of carpet in Beachview. These are things that we are continuing to improve as we go. Our Board of Governors and our Buildings and Ground Committee are active as far as improving things. We just allocated $50,000 to put hedges up next to John Colter's place. So we are actively doing these things to be good neighbors, continue to be good neighbors. Some of the things that are coming out, if Kyle's had a problem with them, or the police or cities had a problem with them, contact, we'll take care of it. But our employees do have rights as well and are allowed to use certain courtesies as well. I think it's a situation that workforce housing return is a very needed thing in Northern Michigan, as we're all aware. You mentioned, how do you have employees? We have it because of this reason. I think moving forward, it is a hard subject for the city to navigate, but I would assure you that we are probably one of the best managed operations to have an employee house in downtown Harbor for the duration that we're here. It is tied into 911. We have surveillance. If there's an issue, we take care of it. We have no intentions of jamming them bunk to bunk like Mackinac Island, so it is what it is.
So you're going to continue to improve these properties?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a 4-year capital plan, probably in excess of $1 million from here on out to keep improving properties.
Okay, for these type properties.
Yeah, one of the architects is right next to me that we're re-siding, re-windowing, refurnishing every one of them. But everybody's aware things take longer, windows that were supposed to show up, maybe don't show up on time. Things to fit a house such as Beachview maybe aren't exactly as easily attainable as they were 5 years ago. So we are taking it as steps that's most appropriate.
Okay. Does your office contact them if there's an issue at night?
I was gonna, public comments done, but I will just comment on Jed, that if I know short-term rentals is down the road on our discussion tonight, but when I have an issue or we have an issue, I call Jed, phone number's here, it's addressed. I remember, I think it was 17 or 18 when I came up here, that we had like a loud party there one night. And I believe that the tenants didn't have hot water for 2 days and it took care of it. And Jed took care of it. And so we get minimal calls down there. Like when I say minimal, the majority of our calls, it's like they're alarmed as well. We might have a smoke of a fire alarm down there. And that's the type of call. I make it an effort myself to introduce myself to the tenants right off the bat and be sent at the beginning of the season to let them know that we're gonna be watching them.
So you go down and talk to the kids, do you?
And I go down there at the end of the season because last year we had no calls down there. And at the end of the year, I went down there and told them, I appreciate their help. So Jed and I have a good working relationship, good or bad, as far as what everybody views as what they want their next to their house, but Jed's responsible.
Thank you. Fire department used to call the big house the smokehouse.
But the positive thing is this alarm.
Get 14 alarm calls there in the middle of the night. We finally convinced them to open the windows.
We even had situations where we've gotten a call, we're busy at work and the Saturday and 4th of July weekend, our kids are not out and about, they're working 90, 80 hours a week that week. I think Kyle, one of his guys called and said, hey, we got a noise complaint. You can go, there's nobody at the house. And there wasn't. So if it was something else happening at the beach or something else neighbors. So we do get some of the, even if it may or may not be our group, we may.
Oh,
get
you're the
some-
catch-all, for sure. No question.
Absolutely.
No question.
Right, commissioners?
Yes, sir.
How much off-street parking do you have for that building?
There is, for the 174.
Yeah.
There's 2 spaces of that, but we have our adjacent lot in the back at Beach Reviews if we need to. And
And
again,
how
these are
many people
people,
already park in that back lot?
correct, but these are also people that, most of them are not bringing vehicles.
But from what everybody else is saying, that all the other units have a lot of cars in them.
They wouldn't be our staff, it's public park.
So if they're parked on the property, they wouldn't be your people's?
Public parking, in the street, public parking.
I think some of the residents mentioned that their cars, a lot of cars on the property as well.
There may be in our driveways. I mean, if there's a lot of cars occupying the driveways that we have a right to use our land.
Sure.
But as far as the public parking goes, that area is a troublesome area for parking to begin with in the summer. Everybody's been down there, it's a squeeze.
Not to interrupt, but a lot of those are Harbor Point cars because they cannot have a car on the point, so tons of Harbor Point cars along Traverse Street.
You can name every business every morning that's lined up down there to go to the point.
Okay, commissioners, other thoughts, questions?
Well, for me, it's, like a lot of people were saying, how, like, they have problems with it already, but like, to me, I'm thinking, okay, the previous owners, they used it, they wanted to have an Airbnb space. And to me, having Harbor Point run it, it gives like other landowners next to it, like a source to go to, or if it's an Airbnb, they've got nowhere to go to. Their tenants are in and out, like, they can't enforce anything, whereas Harbor Point, they can enforce it and they'll deal with it and it's done with, so I don't, I'd rather have them.
That's a fantastic comment, because in the situation that was approved previously, it would have been a much larger headache for every neighbor than what we're gonna be doing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I take your point. We've got public comment close, we better just keep on and try to narrow in on this.
So you're gonna limit this, and all of a sudden that property is gonna be set up as a rooming house. That's where this thing's gonna go.
I heard your point, and I understand it, what you're saying on that. So what we've been asked to do is to approve or disapprove the special land use request. And the rule is, just like you said, if the approval is granted, it would go with the property forever. But we've been asked to approve or disapprove this request tonight. So that's what we'll do. Next.
I just got a question. So if it is like a rooming house, then does that not allow it to be used for like an Airbnb, like space, anything like that in the future?
Are you gonna control it?
So once this designation is made, this is all it can be used.
Yes, that is correct.
Under the current owner or under a new owner?
It's operated as a special land use, as a rooming house. So the new owner could operate it for any other use in that district or a rooming house. It doesn't go away as a rooming house. If Jed would, you as a planning commission cannot dictate if it changes ownership, it would no longer be used as a rooming house. Jed, or representing Little Harbor Club, if they submitted a letter to the city indicating if they no longer use the house, we would voluntarily request to remove the special land use rooming house designation on this piece of property. They can request that. We cannot, you cannot require them to do that, because that would be against the law, as the state of Michigan allows us to do special land uses. So understand, they could offer to eliminate the special land use if they decided, we don't need this house anymore for a rooming house for our employees. We want to sell it. And we would have on record then at the city that if they did that, they could eliminate that rooming house designation that the city placed on that as they requested originally.
Can they use it as a rooming house if it doesn't have that special land use name?
No,
No,
No.
it's just used as a residential property.
yes, and basically the reason they have to use it, we have to go through this rooming house designation is because only a family can occupy a single family house.
Right.
And a rooming house is a residence in which non-family members are sheltered for compensation. That's our definition of a rooming house in our city zoning code. And that fits what Little Harbor Club is going to be using it for. But it allows, though, also under that broad category, if they no longer owned it and they sold it to ABC Corporation, they could also use it for a rooming house that picked and chose employers from about the city who would want to rent a space to put an employee there and have a lot less control. And as indicated by several members of the public, they like the Little Harbor Club operation of this, but do not prefer to see another owner have the property with the rooming house designation of it. And that's why I suggested that Little Harbor Club could send the city a letter and could dedicate and could state so positively this evening that we would receive that within a week or whatever. That's part of this file.
So Larry, you're saying you can't request a condition, but we can submit a condition.
You can voluntarily submit that commitment
If
to
Little Harbor
the,
Club were to sell or change the use of it from something different, absolutely, the designation, we'd let you know the designation could be removed. Right. Okay.
Harbor Club will do that.
Absolutely.
Is that acceptable? Can you put that in? The way things
we
work out?
cannot put it in, they can voluntarily offer it and we can add it to
It's
the record.
attached to it.
Yes.
We are voluntarily offering.
Okay, perfect. So with that input, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nix. Commissioners, any other thoughts on this? Any other questions?
I'm not really impressed with the Beachview property. It's always fairly blighted every time I go by there for, I don't know, the last 15 years of my life. You know, that's great. You mentioned about your capital improvement budget for all of these properties that you guys currently own. If you look at, you know, the actual property values, what you have proposed in capital improvements is arguably pretty minimal for the number of properties you own, the size, and the surrounding neighborhoods and the characteristics of those homes. Also, what's kind of alarming is that number is probably fairly small in relation to the other proposed projects that you want to do to your actual club, which that doesn't necessarily benefit everyone in the community. So, I don't know. Pardon me? So it's kind of a hard sell for me.
Beach is in a hard spot right now. We had plans to redo it. A large tree, I'm sure you all noticed, fell on this winter.
I'm aware of the big
We're
tree.
going back and forth with the insurance company right now to get coverage. We are going to be sheltering it much more than there is and re-siding and re-windowing the whole thing.
Okay, but you know, that doesn't solve like the just errant cars parked and the garbage in the lawn and the dumpster half open and all the stuff that I see every day, but
It's not
anyway.
a well-kept property.
No, it isn't. And
Not at all.
I don't see why, you know, that wouldn't just carry on to another property that you own. So yeah, it's not a real positive for me.
Are you new at this job?
2016.
Okay, so you've been here through some of this chaos.
Oh, yes.
And now we're gonna do an abrupt change.
Yes.
I'm curious, as a commission, we're voting on whether it falls in the guidelines, not whether they keep up their properties
Correct.
at a certain, because I just think like you may have neighbors, you know, that have nothing to do with having a rooming house or,
Well, to me, this goes to number 6, proposed use shall be so designated, located, planned, and be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected.
right,
My point is, they have other properties that don't really fit that bill.
Right.
So I would be concerned about that.
And we'll be going through the 7-question checklist, just like you did for the last.
Yeah.
Did you allow outdoor fires for employees? And we've been talking a lot about short-term rentals in the city of Harbor Springs, and we've been talking a lot about short-term rentals in the city of Harbor Springs, and people have strong concerns about the number of short-term rentals that we're allowing in residential areas. They have concerns about the density, and I heard some comments tonight about the density question. And how many rooming houses does one neighborhood take? When does that max out? When does it become much less than a residential use and much more of a commercial use? The 163, which is not, wouldn't be allowed to have a rooming house designation if it weren't grandfathered in, is on the other side of the street. It's on the, I think it's R1 zoning, or
Correct, that's an R1.
R1A.
R1A zoning. So that's additional pressure in the neighborhood. And so I do have concerns about the density. Like, is it just too much for one neighborhood to have to bear? And are they better than short-term rentals? Maybe in some ways they are. Are they worse? Maybe it's more intense actually in some ways. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough on the neighborhood. Very sensitive to the need for employee housing and for the benefits of having a centralized management, for a property. I think that's all great. But we have homeowners on Traverse Street and on Woods Drive and on Glen Drive that count on this being a neighborhood for them, for themselves and the people. And yeah, it just may be too much to bear, but we'll find out when we go through the checklist. Any other thoughts or questions? Or should we see how this scores out? All right, take that as a yes. Let's go through this. First one, the proposed special land use shall be in such location, size, and character that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood.
That's a no.
That's
for
it.
me.
No.
Well, it depends on what neighborhood you're looking at. If you're looking at this map,
R1's across the street, and we are in the R2 district.
We need we could use a consensus on each of these tests so that we know how this scores out. So why don't we just do a show of hands? Who believes that this request is of such location, size, and character, it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood?
Can I just interrupt? I feel like we're only talking about this particular property. So
That's
now
right.
it's like getting rehabbed and it looks completely different than the other homes that they use as rooming houses. So like that cannot be in the back of our minds thinking this may turn into another one like one day or that, but we have to kind of think about what it looks like now in the it's harmonious, or are we also thinking about the amount of people?
And
on
about
this
the
one?
use, is the use,
The use, okay,
because that's actually what we're approving, is not the building, but the use.
yeah.
So
And
let's-
in that district is 2 other rooming houses and an RM property next door.
Say that again, Jeff.
The use is next to 2 rooming houses and 2 RMs and an RM in that district.
In that district, but I'm thinking about the neighborhood, so the bigger neighborhood, not just the district. So commissioners, who believes that this special land use is in harmony with the rest of the neighborhood. And who, can I see hands who people believe that?
Who agree with that?
Who agree that it's in harmony with the neighborhood, location, size, and character of it? Okay. That's a 0. All right, test number 2 is the proposed use shall be of a nature that will make vehicular and pedestrian traffic no more hazardous or congested than is normal for the district involved, taking into consideration vehicular and turning movements in relation to routes of traffic flow, proximity, and relationship. But the main question is the amount of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Who believes that the special land use will not increase pedestrian or vehicular traffic?
I believe that.
Okay. Who does not believe that?
There's 12 additional potential.
How can it not?
But they don't have cars.
We don't know that.
Yeah, but
for sure.
that's,
You can't bank on the fact they're always not gonna have.
right.
And I get that.
Okay, number 3, the proposed use shall be designed as to the location, size, intensity, site layout, and periods of operation of any such proposed use to eliminate any possible nuisance and emanating therefrom, which can consist of dust, noise, fumes, vibration, smoke, or lights. Who believes that the proposed land use will not cause nuisance, dust, noise, fumes, smoke, and lights? Who believes that the proposed land use would cause possible nuisances? Standard number 4, proposed use shall be such that the proposed location and height of buildings or structure and location and nature of the height will not interfere with or discourage appropriate development with the use of adjacent land and buildings. So this is about the building itself. Who believes the building is fine and consistent with the standard? Great. Test number 5, the proposed use shall relate harmoniously with the physical and economic aspects of adjacent land uses as regards prevailing shopping habits, convenience of access by patrons, continuity of development, need for particular services and facilities in specific areas of the city. I'm trying to determine how this relates to this proposed use, and I'm not sure it does. Not applicable?
Yeah.
Commissioners? Okay.
Well, I guess the last phrase in that sentence is a specific application of the situation. The need for particular services and facilities in specific areas of the city. Worker housing, that's what they're providing.
All right,
Oh.
I take that.
That's point on there.
Specific
The other ideas aren't necessarily applicable here.
Great, thank you for.
But services and facilities, you know, the need for those, and this is a very particular need we've heard over and over again, worker housing is definitely needed in this community.
All right, with this new clarification, who believes that the proposed land use would be helpful for filling a particular need or service in this area of the city? Test number 6, the proposed use shall be so designed, located, planned, and operated that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected.
Who believes that?
I'm still soaking it in myself here. Any comments about the public safety, health, and welfare regarding this land use? Any thoughts?
So you can only go by what this gentleman is telling us going forward. Right now, it appears your track record is questionable, according to these folks. So you're promising us going forward that things are going to change.
Yeah, but according to Kyle, he hasn't had any issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but there's parking and there's a myriad of issues flying around in here, all of which land in your lap. So what you're assuring us, that there's a sea change, that you're going to change your operation and your care and your overseeing. Yes. you're skeptical.
Let me read it again. If you got a letter from the Harvard Club that said they do this stuff, then you could enforce it and the people involved could enforce it, and you wouldn't be having all this conversation. If you had that letter that they would do this.
Okay, sir, we better continue on with our deliberations. Number 6 is the proposed use shall be so designed, located, or designated, located, planned, and be operated that the public health, safety, and welfare will be protected.
Who believes this? I do.
Yeah, I can only go by what Kyle says,
Yeah.
They haven't had any issues.
and he hasn't had any issues.
All right, let's get a show of
I'm
hands.
a former Marine Corps drill instructor.
All right,
I'll come knocking at your door.
so
Yeah, driveway is my door.
who believes that this use is okay with public health, safety, and welfare? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Who does not believe that? All right, final test, number 7, the proposed use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood. Will not be detrimental to existing or other permitted land uses in the zoning district.
Once again,
You, let's talk about it for a minute.
I think if it's well managed,
So maybe-
promise,
It
yeah,
should be.
yeah.
It'll
It'll be
probably
okay.
does.
You go back on your word, it'll be a disaster. I understand that you don't make the decisions, you answer to a higher power, but you need to.
There's just a perception of rooming houses.
Yeah. You need
And-
to
Yeah, there is. There's an absolute percent. It's not just in Harbor. either.
It isn't.
It's everywhere.
It isn't. I mean, people who want to buy homes there, they want a neighborhood. They don't want people that are gonna be in and out and transient. And I mean, it does affect the value of the homes in the neighborhood.
We do an extensive background check on all of our staff before we bring them. So I mean, we don't have
Right.
convicts.
And like I said, it's a perception and so there's just no way you can't. It's difficult to battle that perception.
It absolutely is.
It's not a perception. You bring these young folks here, and it appears that you exercise little or no control over them, and they run wild, and these people get infuriated, and nothing happens. And whether this passes or not tonight, you need to tell us that this is going to change. It's critical for your vote.
Absolutely change. I will argue the fact they do not run wild. You can cop and attest to that as well. But
50
if that
million
is the
Frenchmen
perception,
can't be wrong.
We'll continue to work on it.
Yep, Max.
Yeah, so like you was saying, I mean, they're here to work. I mean, they work, like you said, 4th of July week, which is super busy around here, like 80 hours a week. Like I don't think they're out there causing havoc or anything like that. Like they're working and then they're going home and they might have a little fun at night, but like Officer Nice said that, I mean, there haven't been significant problems, so I don't think it's that big of a deal.
And that's one of the enjoyments of Harbor Springs in general. People come here to have a good time in the summertime. Not just being on staff, that's everywhere.
Thank you. The question before us is, will it not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood? It wasn't about behavior.
What do they mean by substantial injury? Do they mean like
Decrease
harm to it or
injury to-
property value?
So think of Mr.
The value.
Mr. Coulter.
Property.
Mr. Coulter is ready to sell his house at some point in the future. And the buyer said, oh, what a beautiful street. Now, how are the folks next door? And the realtor says, oh, good, they're really good. It's a rooming house. And people say, oh, that's interesting. So do you think that the value of Mr. Coulter's property would be harmed by having a rooming house next door and across the street? And
Yeah, definitely would. And
Yeah.
I think that, where do we draw the line? Because, everybody wants affordable housing, they don't want it next door to their house. So I think that's the big balance. And
It's a catch-22, and I totally understand that. But you have two things to look at: the approved use before with a rooftop glass patio for short-term rental versus us for 12, 13 weeks. So what it was, what's been approved and what it was compared to what we're using it for now, which has the higher impact.
Did you really approve that for Airbnb?
If I could comment briefly, and I've got the site plan from the zoning board of appeals discussion that was had on this several years ago. We can see the triangle wedge area is the buildable envelope of this property. Most of the home lies outside of that. So this property has been to the zoning board of appeals twice for variances in ways to modify the footprint of this property. There was a variance granted to modify the front porch area from what was previously there. There was also a variance granted for the deck and a stairwell on the back. I will caveat, there was not a variance granted to approve of any type of stairwell with a rooftop deck.
If there's a stairwell in the back, if that's what went to the deck,
It did not go to the roof, it went to the second floor.
there was nothing in the plans.
The ZBA did not approve a rooftop deck on their plan. And if they want to discuss that, we can review those plans at a future date, but that would be, you know, a separate issue from what they're talking about tonight.
I'm going off the plans that were handed over.
There's a second level.
There's a second floor deck, but nothing on the rooftop.
Right. There is a platform for a rooftop deck, and we did not install stairs.
Okay. Okay, we're on the final test. Number 7, let me read it to you again, commissioners. Proposed use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood in which it is to be located, and will not be detrimental to existing or permitted land uses in the zoning district. All right, who believes that the proposed use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood?
And that's predicated on our conversation.
Who believes that the requested use will cause substantial injury to the value of the property in the neighborhood? 3. All right. Okay. So where we came out on a scoring basis is the request failed on test number 1. It failed on test number 2. It failed on test number 3. It passed on test number 4. It passed on test number 5. It passed on test number 6 and it failed on test number 7. So,
If I may real quick, number 7 includes the district, not the entire neighborhood, the neighborhood within.
actually, the
district.
wording is other property in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood in which it is to be located, not existing or other permanent use in the zoning district.
In the zoning district, in my mind, applies to the permitted land uses. So it's pretty clear, it's injury of property value in the neighborhood. So, commissioners, where does that leave us?
You're about to approve a VRBO, which is much worse than what they're wanting.
Well, commissioners, where does that leave us?
Say no.
Yeah, 4 to 3. We done with the public comment too?
Yes, we're done. Yes.
Okay, so if it gets voted down, what happens to the property?
We don't know.
We don't know.
You own this property?
Yes. They can operate it as a single family home. They can operate it as a rental property, as a seasonal rental. They can lease the house out, on a shorter long-term lease period, whether it be for, 3 months or for, 24 months. But they can use it as a single family dwelling. Basically is what the
Let's go back to
R2
the
zoning
rental
district.
property thing.
Say again,
I
please.
said, let's go back to the rental property thing.
Okay.
So we deny this boarding house.
Rooming house.
Rooming house, excuse me, and 8 college kids show up and pay short-term rental fee,
Okay,
where are we?
They have to comply with the regulations of their short-term rental license.
right.
If it's owned by a different entity, our employees could rent it under a short-term license.
Well, they could rent it from the Little Harbor Club.
Yes.
Now, this is all getting to be kind of a moot point here.
If that's a line that is deeper, let's go a line.
So if they're gonna use,
It is our goal to.
So you guys have opted to do this the right way rather than slide it. under the
Absolutely,
table.
that is our try.
Okay, well,
You know, my timetable.
Any type of a facility like this, and we had one several years ago up on State Street, okay, top of the hill. Where a property, a fellow wanted to buy the house and turn it into a rooming house for his employees. And the public input we received that evening was deplorable. I haven't seen public comments like that for many years.
I'll agree, I was here.
They were just outrageous. Things that I thought were done with back in the 70s. But it was here, and it was very shameful. And I've seen it happen before in public meetings in my 47-year career. They're a difficult situation to deal with, worker housing. What Judd is saying to us this evening, Judd, I got that right?
Yeah.
Jed, sorry. They haven't been maintaining their properties well, and they have recognized that. And they are dedicated and working on improving that situation. They know they haven't been a good steward of their property, if you will. I think they came in this evening kind of having that idea in their back pocket, maybe hoping it wouldn't come out, but it did. Okay, because it's not a very positive thing for that, for their use. But there appears to be a commitment by Little Harbor Club to improve that situation. I hope they do.
you need to take this to your board.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You've come here to ask us to approve a project that's millions of dollars. Are you the architect on this project? And you say at the same time, well, fixing up these buildings is a long process and we're gonna budget. Why doesn't your board incorporate this into the big project and spend some money now on these properties and fix them up and clean them up?
We were denied a public hearing 2 years ago over our property to improve it. Yeah, at Beachview. So we've been trying.
Why do you need approval to?
It's a non-conforming structure. It's a non-conforming structure.
And it wasn't felt that it should be brought before the planning commission. So we had to.
So we have been actively trying.
We have it in file and we can bring it out anytime, but it was not allowed to be presented.
That included parking, paving, screening, new workshop to hide the dumpsters, new dumpster area, new access. Yeah, all of it.
I would say that that's not the whole truth. They presented a plan that they wanted to bring forward for site plan approval. I informed them that because of the existing non-conforming use, that prevented them from expanding the use. Before they could present a plan to expand the use, they needed special land use approval for that site. And they opted to not come to the planning commission to get that special land use approval.
Okay. I'm sure there was a story. A public announcement was put out and then we were told we weren't gonna have. That was not my recollection. And I didn't really want to follow up Chandler. That was a rough meeting.
Regardless, in process, we have numerous improvement projects underway on the boards.
And where are these projects?
All the houses you referenced. 182 Bay, 163 Travers.
174, which just came online this last year. As
I'd
the
love to-
other business failed.
These are a little bit this year, a little bit next year.
I'd love to snap my fingers, get a full crew in there and knock it out, but it's not.
Then the tree
Things
fell
are
on
feasible right now.
Beachview and that changed.
Just sounds like a lot of.
But when you spend millions of dollars on your large project, money for these a little bit now and a little bit later, it's gonna become harder and harder to float.
No, not necessarily, but they're in process. There is budget toward these. They've been evaluated dollar-wise, and there is money to do them, and they're gonna go forward. It's just, well, for instance, the tree. I mean, just that simple thing changes the dynamic of where the money goes.
This
Things that-
174 project fell into our lap as an opportunity. We said, let's jump on this, finish this one, on to the next one, on to the next one.
No, they're all in process, all of them.
I run a commitment before I go any further with this.
Larry and Jeff, if special land use approval was denied tonight for Little Harbor Club, could they come back later in the year? Could they come back next year with the same request?
Are you saying it was denied based on this?
No, I'm saying if it was denied
Oh.
tonight, could the applicant come back later with the same request?
They can, yes. They can come back with a similar request or the same request.
Can we just table this issue for tonight? And let them deal with their board and see if they can get what Bob is looking for.
What do you ask? I mean, what is your ask? Give me your ask.
I'd like
I'm
to see
asking
a
for a
plan to improve the other properties before we allow you to get another property on the
Probably
ship.
out of the drawer.
About as nice as the Harbor Club.
Document.
No problem.
I mean,
It would be appropriate if you desire additional information of commitment for maintenance, and the other thing we
Yes.
talked about earlier is if they no longer own or need this property for worker housing or for rooming as a rooming house, then they would withdraw their special land use. So if we could get those two pieces of information from the applicant, you would look at this in a more favorable fashion potentially. Not committing one way or the other for you, but.
I'm sorry I'm
if-
hogging up this meeting.
No, but if the applicant requests to table so they can have sufficient time to provide those two documents to you, then you could consider that tabling idea.
In the maelstrom of millions of dollars flying around here, there needs to be some commitment to fix up the devastation you've left behind you. You need to be able to make these people happy. I mean, you're the elite organization in this city.
Jed's been at this for 4 years.
Yes.
But 5 years.
And
And a lot of the things that he's undertaking are deferred maintenance from years past.
I understand.
And there is an honest attempt here to improve these properties and take care of this deferred maintenance that's occurred over time. So you're kind of catching us in the throes of getting this underway, and we got some big things.
But I'm looking forward, and I'm trying to cement some kind of a relationship here
Yeah, I
between
can
you
provide
and the
any kind of
taxpayers and what's
documentation.
gonna happen.
I can prepare it all and get it over to you Monday.
So the applicant
It's in-
could
it's in
request
the drawer.
So then you fellows would like to table this action this evening?
I mean, I want to table it, but if that is what we do, we table it and we'll give you the additional information.
Okay.
Would that be the fastest way to move forward?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just, that information would be very helpful. I just want to make sure you know that this is not a promise or a commitment, that the special land use approval be approved, because
Absolutely.
the two items requested in my mind do not address a couple of the biggest issues, which are the pressure on the neighbors and property values. So,
We want to do this the right way. And I will be back to a short-term.
great. So, applicant, are you asking for a?
Yes, table
Table it for a month?
provide the documents for you.
And bring it back.
Perception is going, and perception is everything, is going to be that you're willing to spend this kind of money on yourselves, but nothing on your neighbors.
Not me,
I understand,
but yeah.
I understand,
Okay,
You're running us for a second.
but it's your organization that's gonna take the
They're
hit.
running simultaneously. Our buildings and ground committees on both.
all right. Yep.
Bill, this is Victor. May I say a
Table
word,
this, Bring
please?
back more information when the time is right, and we'll reconsider it. I want to remind everybody where we left off on the scoring.
We can get
It's
them in
about as
next meeting.
close as you could get. It failed on 3 tests, 4 tests, and passed on 3. The other one it failed on was very close. So, about as close as it can be. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Who-
If I
Bill,
could just
this is
add, I think
Victor.
it would
Can
be
you hear me?
important That if we're having a request from the applicant to table this, that we set a specific time that we would like to bring this back up for discussion. That way, anybody from the public that would like to participate knows when it's coming back up. And that if we miss that opportunity to bring it back up, or we don't receive the information that's requested from the applicant, and that meeting doesn't take place, that we would re-advertise for a new special hearing or a public hearing for special land use, so that the public is aware of what's going on.
Great point. All right, Commissioners, when would you like to hear this again?
One thing to consider, if these guys do need to use this, would you use it for employee housing this year?
We'd love to.
Okay, so if they do, I think it's fair to us, when is the deadline for the short-term rental application that we established?
We did not establish
All
a
year.
deadline.
Okay,
That was council.
oh, council denied, okay,
Yeah.
didn't, never mind then,
We'll cover that too.
don't worry.
When do you think you'd be ready to come back with additional information? So we meet again in a month. So
Why don't we do it sooner than a month?
You can meet in 2 weeks if you
Yeah.
want.
that gives enough time for public notice?
Gives them time to meet.
We wouldn't need to do a new public notice. So 2 weeks would be potentially the first Thursday of the month, June 2nd. Our normal next planning commission meeting would be June 16th.
That's great. Well, I say we can, whatever speed we can do to make some of this happen.
Do we need quorum?
As far as existing properties, let's get it going.
Commissioners, how does June 2nd look? Thursday, June 2nd, 5:30 PM?
I'm not good.
You're not good.
I'm a maybe.
No, I can't make it.
You can't, okay, so we have
To
a
do it on Thursday.
problem. That's Thursday. That was Thursday.
We're flexible, so you know,
We do it on Wednesday and you guys could come.
We just have to be cognizant of there are other boards that meet on other days, so I'd have to refer with other people about when the room is available.
You mean we're not the most important?
We think we are.
How would Wednesday look for commissioners' schedules?
Fine.
Get the first.
Wednesday, June 1st, 5:30 PM.
I can do the first.
Emily?
No.
Still can't.
No.
George can't. All right, let's look out one more week.
We won't be here either.
About Tuesday, the 7th.
During the month.
Tuesday, the 7th, 5:30 PM. Commissioners?
Yes.
As a special meeting, will this be a single agenda meeting?
Yes,
Yeah, let's
it would be the only item on the agenda.
keep to that.
Or Thursday, the 9th would be the next.
Thursday the 9th, I could do that.
Thursday, the 9th,
got another big meeting.
If we go Thursday, we will be here, but we won't be using it for the season.
What about the seventh, Tuesday the seventh? 5:30 PM, going once.
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
twice. Sold. Tuesday, June 7th, 5:30 PM. All right, special meeting. This is the only topic. Guys, get your extra information and we'll come back to it.
There needs to be a motion. We should have a motion for.
To table.
Let's have a motion for
applicant's
that.
request.
Does this meeting has to go to the regular board, correct? The regular council, correct?
No.
But after this, does it get approval?
No.
No, okay.
All right, do we have a motion to have a special meeting on Tuesday, June 7th at 5:30 PM to consider this special land use request?
Yes. the motion.
Barry makes a motion, good. We have a
second
second. I'm gonna second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, I think we got all our i's dotted and t's crossed on this one. Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks you, members of the public. Very helpful. We really appreciate your input and comments. All right, we're gonna stand up again. We'll take another little break. And talk more in Little Harbor.
No.
Jeff, can you hear me?
Trying to get you some satisfaction.
I think it's Russia. Let me.
You're absolutely right.
Yes.
Those people in the audience.
Oh, yeah. Highly committed citizens. All right, coming back to order. Our commissioners are back. Did we bring dinner, you guys now? Great. Next thing on the agenda is the site plan review for 130 Traverse Street.
That's our second room in the house, right? Everybody's gone.
All right, Jeff, what's the objective of this agenda item?
This one's a little simpler. This is not a special land use. This is just a site plan review. So it's similar to the first thing that we had on the agenda. We're reviewing this to make sure that they're complying with the zoning code requirements and so on and so forth in that vein.
Great. And what are the possible outcomes?
Again, similar, we would approve it based on that it meets the standards of the zoning code. If we think that there's an issue that needs to be addressed, we could deny it. Or somewhere in the middle, if they propose ways to address certain issues that we may find.
Okay, great. And applicants, again.
Look quieter now.
Yeah, would you care to give us an overview of your project?
So, as you've heard, we are in a long-term capital planning project, club-wide and employee housing-wide. The beginning of it is improving our tennis and pool facilities.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. Just
Sorry.
I don't think we can close the door. We want to close the door. But
This portion improves our tennis and pool facilities. Our pool was originally 1970, I believe, and it's really starting to show its age. We have retaining walls on both sides where they're starting to crumble and fail. So we're coming to the planning commission for the approval to do such, making it a better use of our space. Additionally, shielding some stuff from the street. But also we do want to note this is a potential plan because it hasn't gone to membership vote yet. Okay, so before it ends on the Harbor Light front page of the new little Harbor Club pool, it is a potential plan that will be voted upon by the membership. We are coming to the planning commission in hopes for approval. So if we do want to start maybe in the fall, we can when the membership approves it.
So hoping to start construction in the fall.
That'd be ideal. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anything else we should know right now? I'm sure we'll think of more questions on that. All right. There, just like that.
Jeff, did you get that 3D image? that I sent you?
Oh, when did you send that?
Yesterday.
I have not seen that. Sorry.
Yeah, I have two 3D renderings, aerial views of it. I just got them yesterday, so I didn't have them in my possession before. But there's enough information here. That started. That's just kind of a very
Mr. Chair, so.
Yes.
Based on that, Little Harbor Club, it's a private facility for dining, tennis, beach use, swimming facilities for its members. It's been around since, according to the website, since about 1930. Over the years, it's been improved, updated to the facilities, and basically it's the demands of their membership. They plan on basically scraping the ground from the current clubhouse, the big building on site, Lord Traverse Street, taking and wiping everything up. The tennis courts are being modified. I think, I've never been inside the facility. I think they're a hard surface now.
Same surface.
Oh, it is a clay surface. Okay, and it's going to be reconstructed as a clay surface.
Same on
They're adding a thing in the middle where the pool is. That area, the current pool is being transformed in some entertainment area.
We're calling it
area.
It's not an event terrace.
It's very.
It's an entry.
Okay, it was very unclear to me with what it was. or what was going to go on there. And I'm looking, my report indicates that we're looking for some clarification, so we can appropriately handle this. It's zoned waterfront. A private club is a permitted use as a special land use in the waterfront district, okay? Waterfront district also has, Wallstrom Marine, the Irish IBS, the pier, there's lots of different uses. So it's a very eclectic sort of a zoning classification and has different standards in it. But the use it's there, in my opinion, has always been there. We do not need to approve the use because it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, so we don't have to go through the special land use process. So this has not been advertised as a public hearing. Currently, there's 2 tennis court areas, a pool, a clubhouse, and a food building, very basically on the property. They're proposing changes to remove both tennis court areas and replace them with slightly moved and modified new clay tennis court areas. Are the number of courts remaining the same? 6. Okay, thank you. We're going to remove the pool and the canopy building, and they're removing all hard surface areas west of the clubhouse and the food building. They're removing the parking lot that's adjacent to Henke Street on the north side. They're removing the parking lot on the south side of the site adjacent to Traverse Street. They're removing all fencing, asphalt, concrete, basically clear the site west of the clubhouse, as I just noted. Changes off-site, they're removing the concrete curb and gutter adjacent to Henke Street and at the intersection of Traverse Street. They're removing the Henke Street sidewalk and relocating it. They're removing the hedge at the north property line adjacent to the tennis courts. They're removing the sidewalk and a portion of the street at the south parking lot area. What they're adding new is the clay tennis courts, which we've established are currently clay, but they're replacing them with new clay tennis courts. Are we taking all the clay out and putting new clay in? Really? Not easy. That's a whole different topic, but it's not a germane. They're adding a smaller pool area to the south side of the site with a lap pool and a kid pool. We're reconfiguring how their pool situation works on site. At the south entrance from Traverse Street, they're adding a small parking lot with 5 parking spaces where there was 26 parking spaces. So they're losing 21 on-site parking spaces. They're creating a new entry at that south parking lot. They're creating 17 new parking spaces on the south side of Henke Street. On the south side of Henke Street, so that means that's where there is a sidewalk now in the hedge. That whole area is being moved and slid a little bit to the south, the retaining wall, the tennis court area, to push parking partially in the city right of way and about 8 feet into private property, into their property. From the plans submitted, this may change based on a discussion that Jed had with city staff and police, that hedge may be rebuilt or replanted or try to move. Okay, but right now it looks like from the retaining wall all the way to Henke Street, it's all asphalt. There's going to be a 10-foot fall fence put up at the north end of the tennis courts with a mesh on it to screen the view from the public.
There'll be arborvitae all along there. There is gonna be a hedge there.
Oh, okay, well, the plans don't show that. I'm talking about what the plans show.
Right.
It took me a long time to sort my way through all of the plans and what was real and what was, I didn't need to know. So when Jeff just emailed it to me, it was like, oh, come on, I can't look at this that way. So he sent one to me and got it the next day. They're creating 16 new parking spaces on the north side of Henke Street. There is parking there now on the north side of Henke Street. But the parking space the Little Harbor Club owns that strip of land where those parking spaces are on the north side of Hankey Street. And what they're doing is sliding those spaces closer to the travel area of the street and creating a new sidewalk on that side of the street on Hankey on the north side of those parking spaces. And what that's causing is the cross street or the crosswalk from the east side of Traverse Street to the north side of, to the west side of Traverse Street. It's moving from the south side of Hankey Street to the north side of Hankey Street. So there's a relocation of the crosswalk.
That's not shown in any of the drawings.
Oh, yeah.
It is?
No, it is.
The relocation?
Well, you gotta interpret it. You gotta look at the plans really quick.
Page C100 of the plan shows a pretty good idea of the existing conditions and what's on site plan. And I believe that shows the location of that crosswalk that's on the south side of Hankey that crosses Traverse Street. It's not clearly shown, but if you look at page C200, that's got a really good idea of the proposed changes, and they've labeled everything on there. And it doesn't necessarily show the crosswalk crossing the street, but you can see the addition of the sidewalk on either sides of Traverse on the north side of Hankey. That would be the new location of the crosswalk, if that helps to visualize that. And I have the proposed changes here, and if my pointer works, there's the portion of the sidewalk on each side of Traverse Street showing where the new location would be. The old one, and we can see the leftover sidewalk here, it was right in this location. And they're proposing the need to move that because they're proposing adding 2 additional parking spots where this is currently green space and the crosswalk. Does
Is
that
the
help?
center line of the street moving north?
Yes.
That's what it looks like.
So widening, planning on widening Hankey's really narrow. Taking property from the Little Harbor Club's property on the north where that parking lot is, it's deeper than normal. So we're taking some of that land and converting it to Hankey Street, so it widens it.
So to make up for it for what you're taking for the parking on the other side. Gotcha. It looked that way.
Okay, they're also creating, there's 16 parking spaces on the north side of Hankey. There's a couple less than that there now. They're creating an event center in the existing pool area with restrooms and a bar storage area. This area should be discussed to determine the nature of that event center area. I don't, are they doing dog shows? Are there summer concerts going on there? I don't know. Or is it just a social gathering place? It just needs to be defined. Okay. Parking. There's 50 parking spaces on the Little Harbor Club site currently. Okay, they're taking, there's 14 spaces on the north side of Hankey Street. There's no ADA, American with Disabilities Act type of spaces. There's 10 spaces on Hankey Street, south of Hankey Street at the corner, and there's 3 ADA spaces there. And there's 26 parking spaces on the south side of the tennis courts, and there's 2 ADA spaces there. What they're proposing is 16 spaces versus 14 spaces on the north side of Hankey. They're proposing 17 spaces on the south side of Hankey Street where there's no parking currently, partially in the right of way and partially on private property. They're providing 10 spaces on the south side of Hankey Street with 3 ADA spaces, and that's no change. And they're proposing 5 spaces on the south side of the new pool area where there used to be 26 spaces. There is a net loss then of 2 parking spaces from the 50 that was provided on site. What's in question are the spaces on the south side of Hankey Street that are mostly in the city right of way and somewhat on the private property. Should they be considered street parking in public or private parking for the exclusive use of Little Harbor Club. I don't know.
There. Just point of reference, there's more space on the Little Harbor Club property and less on the right of way. I believe it's 4 feet in the right of way and 8 feet on the Little Harbor Club property. I think that's my record.
No, you have 8 feet on Little Harbor Club property, and of the 20-foot long parking space, you have 12 feet.
Oh, I see what you, oh,
Okay.
I'm thinking of the roadway, sorry.
No, okay, yes. But thank you.
It was 8 feet.
Hankey Street, and I made an error in my report, thank you, Rick. Dang it, I hate when I do that. I talk about Hankey Street as being a one-way street, and it's not. Hankey at that location from Bay Street to Traverse Street is a two-way street. Okay, it's not a one-way street. One of my suggestions was we should angle those parking spaces to accommodate a better one-way traffic flow there, because with this parking being on both sides of the street and with the street not being that wide, it's going to cause a little difficulty in traffic moving through. It's a low traffic area, I know that, but we got to think about traffic safety also. The bump out at Traverse and Hankey Street, they're proposing in the city right of way, and moving the crosswalk from the moving this right here, this crosswalk that's here now, and moving it to this location over here, that's not necessarily a concern or a problem. But they're adding 2 additional parking spaces here and here in the street right of way. And when you come up Hankey Street, okay, you're coming up a hill. And thus with 2 cars here, and it's going to make it harder to see traffic on Traverse Street in that location, because Traverse Street is a very busy street. I don't know what was happening this afternoon when I went by there, but it probably took me a good 15 seconds to get out. And that doesn't seem like a long time unless you're used to the area and you just pull up and you usually just go. There was like a parade of people coming through there. And it was like 2:30 in the afternoon and I'm going, what's going on? But I don't know. Maybe something got left out of work, but I know there's no employers up in that area. But it was busy and it kind of confused me. One of the interesting things they're doing, and I did not put this in my report, these yellow things that you see here in the parking areas, that is an underground stormwater collection system. They're basically large, the ones I have seen anyways, and I know they're gonna, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what the plans show. It's an underground storage system. It's basically big plastic containers. Stormwater goes into them and they get filtered out slowly into the groundwater, into the surface water areas. Okay, it's a natural collection and absorption system that's there. It's very neat, as opposed to just taking all that stormwater in that area and letting it flush directly out into the bay.
I think that's what's in front of Shea, isn't it, Al?
It's a very environmentally.
Shade, yeah, under the shade parking lot.
Yes, okay. But
that's exactly what you're talking about.
I saw the 2 fellows in the front kind of like, what's he talking about? But the engineer in the back is going, yeah, you picked up on that. Because I don't see that often, because it's a little bit of.
We looked at permeable pavement first.
Okay.
Because of the runoff issue today.
Yes.
Trying to prevent that, especially vehicles. So this was Chris's second best shot at it.
Yes, and it's a good one. I just like to point it out though, because I don't see
Works
that.
good at the Shea School.
Yes, I don't see it that often. One of the things they don't show is any site lighting at all. There's no lighting plan that I could find in any of these documents.
Just got it.
No, see, they just got it today. I was crazy. all the plans that I went through, page by page, trying to find that. And there's no landscaping plan either.
Got that today, did
And you said it was a complete application.
I'm sorry. It was, how many pages was that? thing?
I know, it's tough.
No, we've got a lot of different entities in this. This is a landscape architect out of Chicago. They're not here tonight.
Okay.
But they've been working from afar, so I'm glad to submit these to you.
Perfect,
tonight.
thank you. I went through the right review criteria of a site plan. And I talk about a concern on Hankey Street with two-way traffic in that 33-foot right-of-way, because that's what the right-of-way is there. It's about a 20-foot wide surface from gutter pan to gutter pan surface, and we got parking at 90 degrees on both sides of the street. Okay, that's not a lot of room. A standard parking lot where you have.
Iron is 20 feet.
Yeah, 20 to 24 feet of aisleway. Yeah, it's not generous at all. Creates a little bit of a concern to me.
Isn't it only two-way now to feed the Harbor Club lot?
That's
That's
right.
on the corner.
Yep.
So couldn't we give up that two-way?
Well,
It's a little
Don't
less
people who live in the condos and in like the Ford Boathouse and those guys, they drive.
They can't come this way.
Yeah,
No,
Bay Street is one way.
They can't, I mean, it's 10 feet, I mean,
But it's illegal.
legally, they can't.
Got it, okay. So it changes right here.
Yes. Yeah, at that 90-degree turn there, George, it changes right here. This Bay Street is one way right here.
Yeah.
Yankee Street is two-way. More than likely, people that live right here, instead of having to come all the way down through the park and beach people and stuff, they may sneak in that way. I don't know. To make Yankee one way out, this, I think, is the major delivery area for the Little Harbor Club. I don't know that for sure. I don't see people, but it makes sense to me that this is where they do. And you don't necessarily want those delivery trucks coming all the way down Bay Street by the park and having to do that route, because that'll really confuse things a lot. And put truck traffic where we really don't want truck traffic.
We went down there and met Jed and
Yes.
Jeff and that was a discussion we had about all the Cisco's and Gordon's, all those trucks coming down by the beach, that could create a problem or something.
That was part of our goal, moving that sidewalk from that side to that side, so the trucks aren't backing up when public pedestrians are trying to cross the crosswalk across Hankey.
Did you take a look at the site view, the clear zone of that intersection there at Traverse and Hankey?
We talked about, I'm concerned about pushing those two parking spots closer to Hankey. Yeah, we might get away with one, two Jed nights, that's a concern of mine. It's, if you get there, we were standing there, but if you get there in a car and you're not gonna be able to see cars coming northbound on Traverse Street. So it would be, probably one may be okay, two, I think would be pushing too
What
close.
if
to
you put a
intersection.
stop sign on Traverse Street? So you had a three-way stop there.
We could, we could, I'm not opposed to that, I don't know
That would
what.
give you the that would fix the sight lines.
Correct. I'm sure there'd be some people happy because people are complaining about speeders on Traverse Street.
Yeah, especially the builders go too fast down there.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not opposed, whatever, that could assist in it.
Was it great? Another interesting aspect of this, right now, we come down, somebody on foot or small kids or whatever, they come down the sidewalk here, they cross the street and they come up here to go to Traverse Street. What they're proposing to do, and right here on the site is an electrical box. Okay, it's Yankee tall or so, and it's very long and rectangular. The sidewalk is gonna come down, go around that, come back, kind of like a U-turn, and then head up the sidewalk this way to then go to the other side of Traverse Street. I make the point in my report that that's a difficult situation. You know, from a small child, trying to make that turn, from an adult having to make that U-turn. What they're gonna do is they're just gonna go out in the street, because they're not gonna make that turn. The sidewalk becomes, maybe a mom with a baby carriage might use it. Okay, but you're maneuvering a U-turn. That's not a natural situation, and it's not even desirable as a non-motorized trail area to do something like that. So I don't know if that electrical box can be moved, but that's like, whoa, really expensive when we start moving those kind of things.
We've looked at that and Jeff and I can't remember the gentleman, and Lucas and
Okay,
the box feeds partially some of the Bay Street condos and then partially some of the clubs. We have a new service we installed when we did the Beach Club 4 years ago that we may feed this portion off. We're looking at fixing that, so,
okay.
you know, for the start, yeah, there'd be a funky thing, but if we can remove that box down the road, we'll get rid of it.
Okay.
I would say the bike
But
traffic down
if
there.
you can't, though, we have this really odd sidewalk
The
situation.
cycle traffic down there is in the road
Are you
95% of
suggesting
the time.
this is on a bicycle, or are you talking about a stroller going around this corner? I mean, that's a problem. I don't quite understand.
Well,
I mean, if I'm walking on the sidewalk and I'm not supposed to have skateboards or bicycles or rollerblades,
Yeah, you're not supposed to.
that wouldn't be a problem going around that, I don't think, but I could see, you know, on a bicycle kind of whipping along, and it would miss it. Yeah.
Or if I'm coming down the hill from Traverse Street to Bay Street, I'm going, oh, my goodness, I got a first time and where's my sidewalk going? So then you're running right into the electrical box.
You are assuming bicycle.
Oh, well.
The box
Or
being
a
on the
mom
car,
with his baby
It's not a
carriage,
sidewalk.
or a small child on a small bicycle, okay?
Or a person in a wheelchair.
Or a person in a wheelchair.
And I was on one of those knee
Oh, yeah.
scooters when I broke my ankle, and it coming down that hill, it'd be tough to stop and make that turn.
Okay.
You'd be wearing out a pair of sneakers, wouldn't you?
Could that equipment be put in a vault?
Sure. I think so.
It'd
That's
probably
definitely a question.
be in the water.
Absolutely.
I mean, their
It's a
their lines are already.
transformer.
Yeah.
Water cable is like maybe, that's probably why it isn't in there.
Okay, we have landscaping, we have lighting, it's just been submitted yesterday to the client, and we have not received that yet, to my knowledge, because.
No, I
Okay.
literally,
Uh,
I haven't saw it.
he hasn't.
Okay, we have the 7, special land use criteria. Probably one of the most important questions, and I'm not even sure it's something that we need to respond to directly, but the city council has to make a decision on is all the public street improvements associated with this plan. What that means is this entry over here, which they're bumping out here and doing that. They're making the improvement here to this corner and adding 2 parking spaces. They're adding this bump out here and having a sidewalk and crosswalk at that location. The sidewalk on Hankey Street, this area of sidewalk here and this parking area right here is virtually all in public right of way. And that's really for the city council to make a final decision on whether they want to authorize that or not. They may want our input, your input as a planning commission. I don't know that. It hasn't been to city council yet, to my knowledge. But if we have an opinion, I think we should offer it to them so they don't have to come back here to get it. It's more efficient that way. The use of the property itself with the tennis courts, with the entry area, the tennis courts, this smaller parking area, the pool area, that all makes sense to me. I don't have any concerns with that whatsoever. I do have a concern with the loss of these 21 parking spaces that were here. Should this parking here, mostly in the right of way, partially in private property, be an adequate substitute for their on-site parking? I don't know.
But they lost 2 spaces and they were already deficient.
In this, no, in this plan. They're deficient. When they took away these 21s, there were 26 here. There's 5 here now with the proposed plan, so they're down 21,
How many do they need?
50.
50.
Yes, and so they're down 2 spaces. Now they've added these 2 spaces here, maybe thinking that balance is at 50, but they're in public arena. We don't count public parking spaces for a private use. We have, I did a parking study once of how much street parking we have in the city, downtown, and we determined that we don't need to require so much private parking because we have all this public parking. And that's when we made a major revision to our CBD parking several years ago based on that whole notion, that study of that.
Is
Now,
the public going to be allowed to park on Hankey?
well, that's, I don't know. I don't know if we're proposing this all be dedicated to Little Harbor Club.
According to what.
Do you guys have an answer?
Trips on either side of the right of way.
You are requiring that to be Little Harbor Club.
Okay, so the public cannot park in those spots.
But they have to get permission from the city of Harbor Springs to use that public space as private parking.
Sometimes those situations don't end well. I just. Sault Ste. Marie had the same issue.
Why
And
would we need
they let it
public parking?
happen with the bank, and the bank changed hands, like the banks typically do. The community wanted to put in a streetscape, and the bank said that no. And so the community went ahead and put in the streetscape and then isolated that parking so it could no longer be accessed. So also, if, you know, it's a 10% slope in that parking. That's horrible slopes, horrible slopes across the street, 8.3, not much better. But, you know, you really should have a landing for that. That's 8.3%, 10% slope on the parking. It's not good design.
Are you saying it's 10% within each parking space?
Yeah, it's 10%.
Front and back?
Yep.
I have a quick question. And this is I'm gonna change hats here. This is a fire department question, not a planning commission question. The width of the streets isn't gonna change. You relocate all this.
It's wider. We widen wider.
Okay.
Proposing widen Hankey Street.
By about what, 2 feet?
It's 24 feet down from edge to asphalt, I think it's 16 or 18 right now. It's pretty narrow.
It's a good jump.
Okay.
We're jumping it up to normal.
It makes the access, fire department wise, which I'm just saying, makes the access better for the semis, for traffic, for the turn radius, for everything.
Okay, this common area or can't remember.
It's almost 8 feet wider.
Events.
The event area, that's not gonna have a building? Or is it?
There's a building, 17, 18 are buildings with a breezeway between them coming in.
How wide is the breezeway?
Building here, which is,
How wide is it?
Yeah.
I think it's like 10 feet,
What, the opening?
the breezeway. 10, 12
It's
feet.
11 now, but we're widening it. That's kind of something that came up in the meeting recently.
But the reason I ask is, if you'll bear with me.
okay.
If you have a fire in this area, we need to be able to get a 45-ton aerial tower in there. I mean, it's a big piece of machinery, and we won't be able to fight a fire here from, the only way in is through here. Well, this is a considerable distance.
Okay.
To flow water overhead.
I didn't know how far that.
Yeah.
You can't do it now.
I think you'd crash onto the tennis courts and work your way around. When you come off that north parking lot and through the fence
onto the tennis court.
Here?
The fence he's referring over here.
Right there.
Right over here?
No, right off the park. Couldn't you come straight through here? And get on here? Couldn't you bust through here? I mean, I know that's not
You're not gonna
convenient,
take
but
a
the place is on fire.
$800,000 fire truck and bust through anything.
Area towers are a bad idea.
Okay.
A regular pumper.
That doesn't change the current setup. There's nothing different from access to that.
I think he was saying from the.
That's my only concern, access to fight, to get machine equipment in. We also have a fire.
Okay, as a use,
Comes from
from
outside.
a use standpoint, as I indicated earlier, there's no concern. Okay? We haven't looked at lighting, we haven't looked at landscaping yet. Okay? There's one discussion that goes to city council, which isn't your privilege. Discuss, I mean, we can have comments on it, is the parking on Hankey Street with the redesign. With adding parking on the south side, this area here, as Ms. Vanessa just pointed out, it's going up a hill, it'll be pretty steep. Okay? And that situation, should that be counted as private parking? Remember, we have 3 competing entities for parking in this location. We have Little Harbor Club, we have Harbor Point, and we have the beach people. Okay, they all compete for parking in this area. Little Harbor Club is the predominant use in that area. We heard earlier tonight about the parking on Traverse Street. There's a lot of people from Harbor Point will park their vehicles there because there's not sufficient parking space on site.
And the point needs to address that.
Well, that's the point. They're not in front of us right now, but there's parking there. I don't know if the parking in front of here is all dedicated to the Little Harbor Club.
It's not, it's all public.
It's all public parking, isn't it? Okay, thank you. But they're looking to dedicate, and this is Little Harbor's called property right here. They own that, so they control that parking. The city owns from this point right here, because this is a property line right through here that runs through that. Okay, so they're proposing to put probably close to 70% of the parking space in public right of way, and 30 to 35% of it in private property, and claim it as their own. Your input on that topic is warranted.
In exchange for,
Widening the street, more public
widening the
parking.
property, giving up Little Harbor Club property to improve the roadway on the north side. Don't forget that.
And the city gains a public parking spot.
Okay, where's that?
At the top,
At the top.
So
Could you go to sheet C305?
property line
Sheet 305.
exists on the south side. That's gonna remain.
correct.
You're not taking roadway and moving it. You're doing
We're
this.
widening Hackney Street, 8 feet.
So going the other to the north, you're gaining 8 feet of roadway, public roadway on Little Harbor Club products.
Ooh, he's in
I can see
agreement
how
there.
you can control that property unless you move the property lines. Move the street, which is essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, I came and picked one up, and I've already taken the scale to all of these things.
Okay.
It's just, it's still, it's gonna be, you're losing land. The city's gonna lose land. It's right away that is going to be used for private parking. And, you know, things happen. Pipes break, things change, owners change, streetscapes change, laws change, and there can be a lot of hurt feelings if the city needs to go back and take that land back.
Oh, that's why I'm.
And it
suggesting
happens.
you
It
move
happens.
The street.
It happens
not make it
more,
bigger.
more than you would imagine. It happens.
In 2012, the city requested land from Little Harbor Club for public parking. So we are attempting to solve these issues paid for by the Little Harbor Club. To solve that with giving us the private parking and the city gaining public parking and a wider roadway. And a safer roadway. The parking grades are the same on both sides of the road, essentially same thing on each side with an 8-foot wider roadway.
I would argue the wider roadway only allows people to drive faster. I just know that from experience. And
What's the potential of a deed switch? You're giving the city property by widening this. Well, why don't you just take this and move it? You get this, they get that.
City might entertain that.
That's
Well,
an easy thing, yeah.
It eliminates this conversation we're having.
I suppose that's true.
Difference would be that you would be accumulating a little more property and the assessor would probably raise your taxes 40,000 a year.
In the event of parking too, up on Traverse Street, we have some trees planted in the right of way. That is technically public parking, right, on the grass there. If that's an issue, we need to take those out to create more public parking. We're happy to do that.
In my opinion, given the new information that's coming in, landscaping and lighting, that we haven't had an opportunity to review yet. Given issues regarding public right-of-way and parking, that's a city council issue, and I'm not sure you have want to formulate a opinion on that yet, whether you're going to make a recommendation to council or just be silent on the issue. We have tennis courts. We have an event center, we have a pool area, and a loss of parking on site. The primary issues that you have. I know they want to move, oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a certain amount of parking that they need to have on site? Do they have to have 50 spots?
They, yes.
That's like a code or something or a.
Well, it's what they have historically had. I did not go through because I was afraid of what the total requirement may be, given the size of the buildings and the use on this piece of property. And I did not calculate the required number of parking spaces.
You think it could be more?
It could be more. It could be more.
There's three
But they're
different requirements for club parking in zoning.
They're not expanding their use though, in my opinion. Okay, tennis courts are the same. They are having an event center, which we still need to get clarification of what that is. Thank you. And the pool area is actually getting smaller.
I was just wondering if they chose to take away all those parking spots to put whatever was over there, I forget, and then take city property to put them over here. I didn't know if they needed to have a certain number of parking, and that's why maybe they just don't have these parking spots. And they have less parking because they chose to put a building where their parking is.
Right, with the plan, our goal is to move our children down to the south end. To have the pool by our Children's Beach Club, by the Harbor Point Kids Camp, to move all that stuff down there. To have children access at that end, having a safe bike path to access the point through our property. By doing so, instead of having the children up in the middle by the street, by moving that, we lose the parking. And we can't get rid of the tennis courts, or else I'd get my head chopped off. So our goal then was.
We don't want that.
Someday, but then we figured, okay, what if we do this over here? And we found some information back from 2012, the city requested land from Little Harbor. We said, hey, let's reinvestigate this. It's the same thing on both sides. We widen the streets, kind of a win for everybody. We pay for the city parking and all of it. So the city gets the improvements, the widen street at our cost.
So you're saying you're paying for city parking for that one spot on Traverse?
1, 2, and the street paving and
The street.
the sidewalks and the curbs and the whole thing.
But there's already a sidewalk going up the one side, it's city, yeah, so it's just the same thing, but in a different location, yeah.
All right, well, it sounds to me like no matter what.
Right now, that's.
Like I said, there's some public parking up there where we have trees and we could remove those trees to have more side parking if the density is still an issue.
On the south side, Main?
On Traverse Street in front of 163 Traverse.
This one doesn't work.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well, we still have to see landscaping and lighting, don't we?
Yeah, so.
Oh,
that's where-
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's bring this together. So no matter what else, we still need to see landscaping and lighting. And we all need to think a little bit on the parking and, determine what the best approach is. I'd like to go visit the site again and look at the grade and, really get a feel for it. I'd like to look at the sight lines myself. So all that leads me to thinking that we ought to table this and come back together with the latest information and our latest thoughts.
I'm happy to walk anybody through it too, because I know looking at these plans and Chris has graded a lot of things, but some of the stuff may not make full sense of looking at it in person.
Great. All right,
This
Commissioner,
is something we could do during this next special meeting.
we just promised that it was gonna be the only topic.
Well, we could potentially add, but my feeling on this is, I don't have much of a feeling per se on the landscaping side of things, but lighting has been of a particular issue on past projects. We definitely need to have the opportunity for a thorough review of the lighting plan to make sure that it's not an issue for neighboring properties. And we need the time to be able to have that review. So my recommendation on this would be that we hold it for the next normal scheduled planning commission meeting. Or at least, we have done in some other instances where we've approved projects conditionally upon a review by staff and consultants, with a recommendation to approve lighting before, but
I don't think we're to that.
We're pretty indifferent on lighting too. I mean, it's.
On this one.
Yeah, that's
All
not-
right, so commissioners, do we need a motion to come back next month, or does the applicant just decide to come back next month?
this is not a public hearing, so we're
Basically, with the event of having lighting and landscaping submitted tonight, you would like further time to discuss this,
Right.
and we're going to postpone any further discussion on this until your regular meeting in June.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's the action we'll take. If commissioners, can I just hear your assent to postponing for another?
Yes. Somebody needs to move to that effect.
That's what I was asking. Okay.
All right.
Oh,
Go, Bob.
Go.
Want a motion?
Yeah.
So moved.
the motion to table for the next planning commission meeting.
Is there a second?
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll send you the PDF.
Yes.